Continuing with Grasshopper scripting, we'll talk about the intersection of two lines. So if we type Grasshopper in the command line of Rhino, then we get our Grasshopper. I want to put as usual, put a C script scripting object on here, and we will therefore take a look at the code by double-clicking on it, of course. Now, if we want to create a line, for example, we'll try a convenient line like there's the line L1 as new line, and these are the 2 points obviously through which the line passes. I could just try that out if you like. I'll just put A equal to L1 and make sure that that's working okay, creating a line in Rhino. So let me therefore try another line as well. Line L2, similar idea with the 2 endpoints of the line, and this time I'll just check that out, make sure that's line 2 is operating as well. So there's my line. I want to find the intersection, which is around about here. Now I need some help on line. We're talking about line is the intersection of 2 lines, and in particular this method. Now let's take a look. It says here bool. That means it returns a boolean, true or false, to whether it was successful or not. Line A and line B, obviously the lines that we're interested in. Now this double A and double B, let's take a look here. It says a double for a start, parameter on line A that is closest to line B. I think they're taking into account the fact that the lines might not actually intersect, and you want to find therefore the closest distance. And it's the same therefore for B. And this is a parameter, in other words a number between 0 and 1 on the line, each respective line. They should end up to be obviously the same point but not the same parameter, which I'll explain in a moment. Now it says here tolerance. That is to do with whether the lines actually meet or not, or sometimes they might run together, but for the moment we'll just put an arbitrary number in there for a tolerance to. Okay, so now let's therefore try out this line method. So if I try this, for example, and take a look at what we've got. So we've got out A and out B. Now, as you know, that's passed by reference, and when you don't give it a value, we use the word out. So if we take a look, it says here that A and B, they are in fact doubles, so I need therefore to declare two doubles, A and B. Now these are the parameters. I'd rather really call them T1 and T2. Perhaps I'll do that actually, T1. Which are the parameters for the respective lines. Now perhaps for experimental purposes I'd like to see those outputs T1 and T2, so I'll just magnify this a bit and add a C output and also a D output, and I'll just say therefore that C is going to be equal to my T1 and the D will be equal to the T2, so that I can just see what's going on for experimental purposes. So if I were to now I need to make a panel for each of those, so I'll go to my parameters and put a panel for C and D. And then I'm going to run my code, and you should see that therefore that they're 0.5 and 0.5. Now that's a little bit confusing, the 0.5 and 0.5. I'm just going to go back and change my line and extend it a bit up here and make the first line 35, 20, just so we can see the difference between the 2 lines, in fact the 2 parameters really. So I've got my line a bit extended, and I can now see if I go to my output, I've got the parameter on C as a third. Now what that means is that it's a third of the way along this line, and this one is 0.5, so it's halfway along that line. But if you were to put them point at each case on that line, you would find they're one and the same thing, which is what we will do. We could, if we wish, have another output to determine the value of s, which will be, ought to be true if it were indeed successful. Incidentally, this stuff here, if we could actually make that in our using statement. So if I just cut that and paste it up here and use the word using and then put a semicolon at the end, of course, then that should do exactly the same thing, especially if we were doing few intersections. I just noticed I've made a mistake here, that I was looking at the wrong help line. This is the one that I was looking at, line double boolean. That's, let's take a look at this other method, which is easier to use. That's the one above there. It just has the 2 points there, line A, line B, the 2 lines, and then we don't need to worry about tolerances and so on. So it's just the 2 parameters, A and B, which is what we've got. So in summary, we've got line 1, which is here, this line here, and you can see that that gives me 1/3 is the C value down here. I've commented that line 1 is 1/3 of the way along. And for D, T2, line 2 is 0.5 of the way along the line. So what I'll do is plot a point. Now I could choose either point, either line I should say, and either value of T1. They should give me the same point at. Let me just try that. So using the point at command, then if I run that, you should find that I've got the point of intersection. I could do exactly the same thing for D1 using its value. So I'll just do the same thing for L2. So if I type L2, you'll see that that appears point at. So I'll double click on point at and use T2, and that's it. Now I should therefore comment out the other one so that I can see that there are 2 different points. So if I comment out the C, there should be no output from that, but I still get my point there. If that's not convincing, perhaps I could just turn the preview off for the moment and then turn it back on, and you can see that they are one and the same point.